You'd like to?
Hi everybody, and welcome to the July 12th. The days are just flying by. The July 12th, 2023 meeting of the Missisquoi Basin Water Quality Council. Thanks for folks who are on Zoom, and there's a few of us in the room. Hopefully you can see all of us. I'm gonna quickly look into the eyes of this owl while I talk.
I hope you guys didn't stay lit up. That's funny.
We do have a quorum, and thank you, Dean.
Yes,
for
we
recording
do.
that. And we can, don't have the agenda in front of me, because
Right.
I apologize. We do a round of introductions for folks. And for the record, Lauren Luston, she, her pronouns, Franklin County and our city current chair of this group and voting member for now.
Yeah, I'm Ellen Fox, alternate, she, her.
Lindsay White, Missisquoi River Basin Association, she, her, vice chair, voting. Take it off, please.
Ted Henderson, Trent Northern Lake Champlain.
Dan, you wanna go next?
Dan Seeley, Richford.
Maddie,
Maddie Ando, she, her pronouns. I guess I'm not voting. I am part of the clean water service provider for this.
Sarah,
Sarah Damsel, Orleans County Conservation District.
Jake.
Did you say Jake?
Yes, I did.
Jake Kucher, Westfield. I am an alternate for the municipalities.
Tom,
Tom Bristleton, FNLC alternate. I saw that Kent's here, so we're good.
Dave,
David Allerton, I'm with the town of St. Albans, the Public Works Director and Town Engineer, and I'm an alternate.
and Beth, and if you can't unmute Beth, we can say who you are.
I think I can unmute. Does that work?
That works.
All right. Beth Torpy, Northeastern Vermont Development Association. I'm a voting member. She, her pronoun.
Thank you, Beth. And then Dean.
Dean Pierce, Quist staff, he, him pronouns.
All right, I think that's everyone. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge and appreciate the folks who are here and acknowledge the folks who are not, and that there might be some major issues where everyone is right now. And I hope everyone's okay. And if you have any needs today, please attend to them throughout this meeting. And just wishing you all well. I know we all know people who are not doing well, so hope you're all okay. And hopefully we can come to some long-term solution and hopefully emphasize how important this work is in general to be better suited for the next one. Thank you, Lindsay, for passing me the agenda. I highly appreciate it. We need to go to the Zoom protocols. Again, please do the best you can to stay engaged today. It's actually the first time we're hosting a hybrid meeting, so I might have the hardest time calling on people. So please be kind and patient with me today. And raise your hands and we'll do our best to stay alert to that with the screen in here. Yeah, thanks. We'll go with that.
Maddie is another set of eyes and can help us. So Maddie, please speak up if there's someone who's raised their hand and we don't notice.
Yes, that'd be very helpful.
Sounds good.
You can see the agenda on the screen. It looks like Jean might have something to add to the agenda.
Well, I just wanted to mention it. I'm not asking for the agenda to be changed, but it's something that I think future agendas may have. Later in the meeting, I'm going to be talking about the guidance on conflicts of interest. And one of the things that I've done in a previous job is work with boards that have a standing item on their agenda, which is to disclose at the beginning of the meeting any conflicts of interest the person might have later in the meeting, and it's a good way to make sure people don't forget. So I'm not suggesting that it happened, although it could. We know that there's one application up. We know that Lauren will probably be recusing herself. But if there were someone else, I think there will be a clearer understanding of this after we start to have more discussion of conflict of interest. But I didn't want to get to that later stuff and then have people say, well, why didn't we do that on our agenda today? And I wanted this as a fallback.
Sure. Great. Yeah, thanks for sending out the agenda and then sending it out again, very appreciated. Any comments on the agenda or changes to be made? Seeing none. We will approve the, I always forget.
You can take a motion to.
Yes, I will take a, does anyone move to approve the agenda?
I will move to approve the agenda as written the second time.
Thank you, Lindsay. Do I hear a second?
I can second.
Thanks, Kent. All in favor, please raise your hand with either your real hand or the emoji icon. You, Lindsay, Ken, Lauren, Tom. All I can see. Are you seeing more on your end, Jean?
I'm not yet.
Sarah
Sure.
Damsel?
I'm trying to vote yes, but I can't find it on the phone, so just.
This is
Wonderful.
Dave, and I say yes also.
Dan also, okay. All those opposed? Seeing none, all those recusing themselves, is not the word I'm looking for. Abstaining, thank you. Abstaining. Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you all very much. For the minutes, Devlin has joined us. Hey, Devlin. Any public comment not related to items on the agenda?
Flow is all different.
All right, seeing none.
Did we act on the minutes?
No, yeah.
No.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, I jumped. Very disoriented. Apologies. We're actually gonna go to the minutes next, from Ron's meeting. I hope folks had a minute to read them. If not, they're on the screen now. Does anyone have any comments or questions related to the meeting minutes from May 3rd, 2023? Seeing none. I'll hear a motion to approve the minutes as written.
So moved.
Thank you, Dan. We're here a second.
I will second.
Thank you, Lindsay. All in favor, please raise your hand. Kent, Lindsay, Lauren, Dan, David.
Yeah.
Beth, thanks. Can you scroll to Sarah? Dean. Oops. Can you scroll to Sarah Damsel? I'm sure her hand's up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was Sarah?
Can you scroll so we can.
Oh,
see
sorry.
all of the images?
Yeah.
Her hands up.
Hey,
Thank you, Sarah as well. And any opposed? Seeing none, any abstaining? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you. Yeah, do you want to try clicking that 9-box option on the top of that screen? No, but it's not actually helpful at all.
Can you drag it around? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Everybody's, you can see all of you now. I'm sorry about that. All right, motion was approved. Now public comment not related to items on the agenda. Seeing none. All right, oh, I blocked myself out. Seating of any new reps or alternates. I know we have a couple.
Yes. Oops, I'm trying to get this in. So- This is a standing item. I'm remembering that, well, perhaps you wanted to mention that Katie Bednarski evidently is changing her position, and so that Mel has been proposed as her alternate.
Yes, so for the Franklin County NRCD, my current alternate is Katie Denarski. She'll be moving on in September. Our current other staff member, Melissa Offerdew, she was my Mel, she will be my new alternate. Is our proposal, and the NRCDs talked and agreed to that change. And so I think it's
It would just be a simple motion to seat Mel as the new alternate.
okay. I'm gonna recuse myself. So is there a motion to accept Mel or to seat Mel Offerdew as the alternate for Franklin County NRCD?
So moved.
Thank you, Kent. Second,
I will second.
Lindsay, thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Kent, Lindsay, Dan, David.
Yeah.
Beth, thank you. All those opposed? Seeing none, all those abstaining, I think Sarah, you're probably also abstaining. Does Sarah have to abstain?
I don't think it's necessary. It's not one that's called for. It isn't explicitly a requirement, and even for you, it wouldn't be a requirement because she happens to work for your organization, but it's all of conservation districts
Okay,
that are putting it forward, so it's not necessary.
okay, so then motion passes. Thank you, everyone. And then I know Sarah also has some changes to make.
Well, actually, I mean, that switch had been taken care of.
Wasn't Abe?
Oh,
Yeah, but not for a while.
oh,
I don't know. Yeah, I can pull up the old
Yeah, we
minutes,
just weren't sure, but I guess we did make that change already, so it sounds like we don't need to make a change now.
yeah, it's already,
It's already been
I
done.
think
it's
that-
on the website, yeah.
okay.
It's done.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any other,
that's what I'm aware of.
okay. Anyone else need to seat a new alternate for their organization? All right, seeing that. Excellent. Election of officers. I actually don't know where we're going with this. So.
Maybe I can just give a little bit of a
That'd be great.
quick 30-second overview, and I mentioned this at the previous meetings as we have come closer to this date. The bylaws have two officers, the chair and the vice chair, and they say that the elections happen at the first meeting after the beginning of the fiscal year, and maybe in the future, given that July is a tough time of year and so much is going on, or people are away, maybe we want to change that. But there's the need to elect those two people to those two positions. I had said in the meeting materials, I believe that I would be prepared to accept the nominations for chair. Once there's a chair, the chair can handle the election for the vice chair if there's any conflict with that. So sometimes a person who is a chair, but who's standing to be re-elected as a chair doesn't want to be presiding over their own election. And so they'll say, I'm going to pass the gavel to, sometimes it's a treasurer. We don't have a treasurer. Sometimes it's a staff person, but I'm prepared to do that. I don't know if there is such a conflict. I don't believe there's such a conflict, but I just wanted to mention that it's an option. There was a nominating committee created. Sarah was the chair of that, but she's unable to be here. If anyone who's a member of that committee wants to provide a report, and I see Kent maybe signaling that.
Sure, yes, the nominating committee reached out to some potential members and we have a slate, a proposed slate. So I will make a motion that I will be the next chair, and Kent will be the next vice chair. That was the slate that we came up with. Thank you to those that we spoke with.
You made that as a motion, or do you want to do it as a report?
Yeah, either. I'm happy to move this forward.
Maybe it's a report.
I will make a motion to nominate Lindsay White as our next chair. Does anyone second that
Second.
motion? Dan seconds that motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I see Kent, Lauren, Dan, David, Sarah, Beth, she found the icon. Excellent. All those opposed? Seeing none. All those abstaining? Lindsay White, excellent. The motion passes. Congratulations.
Get my phone back.
I'll hand it back to you.
Great.
And thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Very much.
I'll rotate the
And
committee.
now you can preside over the election, though.
Right, all right, well, as a newly elected chair, I'm going to seek a nomination for vice chair. Someone want to nominate? Anyone?
I will nominate Kent Henderson.
Is there a second?
Second.
Dan
Thank
seconds?
you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, or I guess I should call for other nominations. Anyone else want to oust Ken?
Leave the room.
All those in favor of electing Kent as our next vice chair? I see Dan, Dave, Beth, Lauren, myself. That's Lindsay, Sarah, Jamzell. Any abstentions? Kent? Any opposed? So carried. Congratulations, Kent, and thank you. And project prioritization. So I will do my best to fill Lauren's shoes. We'll see. Okay,
Or her Sanders.
Sam. Yeah, hers are prettier than mine. All right, so now I have to navigate to the other document. Sorry for project prioritization. Unless Jean, you have something already prepared.
I have a slide that is an at a glance.
There you go.
This
Perfect. That's
topic,
great. Yeah. That's what I was trying to-
This was a fairly straightforward round. As I will explain in just a second, the call for applications was issued back on May 15th and the deadline was June 26th before the holiday. We received one application and the recommendation is for that application to be approved. Now, I'll just pause for a second. I'm saying this, it's there in black and white. There have been some discussions in and in meetings with some of the chairs from WICS with DEC, and I know that there was an issue in one other WIC where they felt really strongly that having a recommendation from the QUIS or from QUIS staff was valued. So I'm just doing it this time, and we can see whether or not that's an issue for people later, but I just wanted the record to show we're recommending this.
Oh, no, I was just gonna send a spreadsheet like this, is what you have.
They're joining. They're muted.
Yeah. She's muted now, but yeah, the minutes on there is joined.
And so to move past that, the application sponsor was the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District, and their request was for just shy of $25,000. The project type is in the assessment ID or development category, the early stage work. And I am going to turn things over to Lauren momentarily. And she can elaborate on all this, but it's an application that involves the use of the functioning floodplain initiative and other tools to target outreach and locate possible riparian planting areas. People may remember that there is a more simple process for scoring these early stage applications. It's not hard to get a good score, but this project got basically all of the points that it could. These early stage projects don't have a phosphorus reduction score because they're so early stage. So there's nothing to report on that end, although river related projects are generally good when it comes to cost effectiveness. I'm prepared to shut up, Lauren, and let you continue. I have the slides that were in the packet. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to share, but
Nothing to share on the screen, but I'll just say some words. We wanted to kind of get in to the queue, to try to start developing some more tree planting projects that would be funded later on by this money. Our organization has a pretty, I'm gonna say, great track record with our tree plantings. We did almost 12 acres of tree plantings this year, so we're good at it. We're skilled up for it. This project, we want to do it across all of Missisquoi within Franklin County. So that's our geographic area. We're not going into the Missisquoi in Orleans County. We also know the FFI tool has recently been released, and I think we just really want to see what that application can do and use it and get really comfortable with it and find some really great riparian planting projects. We also want to then, from that work, be able to actually go meet with landowners and really scope some projects to get on the ground, not necessarily all the coming year, but to really get a good list of projects that we can maybe all be working on in the future. Just try to develop some things to work on using the tools we have in hand. And we really want to do a pretty good job and really understand the tools and do a pretty good synthesis of past work. So that includes also looking through stream geomorphic assessments and talking to as many people as we can, including Stacy Pomeroy, a river scientist. So we want some capacity to be able to do a good job with this so that we don't have to piecemeal it in the future. And that's our proposal.
Anyone have any further questions for Lauren about this? There was information in our packet.
Excuse me. Do you anticipate employing any subcontractors? If you're looking at projects other than tree planting? Will that happen at this stage, or is that something that would happen subsequent to this?
We are not planning to hire any subcontractors at this stage. Our in-house knowledge and staff, I think, can handle this first pass. If we do conveniently stumble upon not just tree planting projects as we're going through this tool, which obviously might happen, we'll probably try to spin those off into other projects. Our intention is to look for tree planting projects, but there might be some sites that are really great for tree planting and floodplain lowering. So we'll definitely identify those and maybe kick those to another list that we can all have access to.
I think I see that you stopped sharing, Dean, but I found the timeline very helpful in the application. I don't know if you want to throw that up there. I think the next page, just for folks to see what FCNRCD plans to do over the next year.
Yeah, so really doing a lot of desktop work in the fall and winter, and then getting out next field season to see what projects are viable, talk to landowners, and then start preparing applications for either trees for streams funding or WIC funding to actually start implementing some projects in spring of 25. So we're going to take some time and really do a good job on this.
Sarah, answer.
Yep, Sarah Dimsell.
Hi, Lauren. This is really nice to see this application. I was just wondering, I think as we all are, in the aftermath of these storms, how this impacts our work and what we can learn from it. And I don't know if any of you all felt this way, but I sort of felt slightly defeated in the world of water quality, seeing all the sediment head downstream. But sort of in light of that, I wonder for your preliminary project prioritization, connecting with municipalities to get a sense of like, what particular parcels would be priorities for them in terms of, you know, getting some reconnection to the floodplain to reduce damage to public infrastructure.
I'll
Just
say-
an idea.
Yeah, that's currently outside the scope of this proposal, but I do think it's something we should do. And maybe that's a next round proposal, I completely agree.
You didn't see this
Yeah.
coming back when you submitted this?
I know. I really should have. Yeah, and I think, you know, if we learn some things with FFI tool that are transferable, like we would love to be able to do that, to make sure that all of us, and all project partners have the skills to use that tool effectively. But 100% Sarah, yeah, I think maybe, probably not today, but something we should talk about at this meeting of, yeah, who's gonna take on what, where. We all know that needs to be a priority. And can echo the sentiment of defeat also. Yeah. Stuff to look at right now. At least there were crops growing though. If nothing else, at least there was some green stuff growing. And it wasn't in the middle of winter.
Right. Any other questions or points of discussion from this application? Any desire for clarification from the staff and their assessment?
We're ready, so, seems to me a motion on the proposal would be
Great.
in time.
If there's no other discussion, we'll seek a motion regarding this proposal. Kent,
I'd be pleased to make the motion to adopt this really strong proposal. Really glad to see it and be great to see it in other basins.
there's a second.
I'll second it.
Kent motion, Dan seconded. All in favor of accepting this proposal, raise your hand. I see on screen Dan, Dave, Sarah Damsel, Alaire, Beth. In the room, we have Kent. Any abstentions?
Lauren Weston abstaining.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion's carried. Congratulations, FCNRCD.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Go ahead,
Um,
Dave.
I came in a couple of minutes late to the meeting. I just want to be clear, am I still alternate today or is my voice needed as a voter?
Oh, you actually are needed.
No, Dan
Oh.
is here, so. he is-
Okay.
he-
You're
you are
all
still
set.
in motion.
You're
Okay.
all set as an alternate. Thanks, Jake.
All right, I didn't want you guys to think I'm just kind of sleeping on the job here. Thank you.
One note to about the process for these applications, once you apply, once you go to the end form to get a water quality or water
ID.
form, ID number, you don't get a notification when it's approved. That would be quite useful if we could pass that along to DEC.
Yeah, it's something that I believe has been mentioned before. I think
Okay.
I've at least thought about it.
Okay.
There are a lot of things with the project ID issuance process that I have issues with.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was waiting and waiting and I was like, oh,
Like,
it's
it
actually
happened,
there.
you know, and
Like I was waiting and submitting, I was like, oh, we're able to submit on time, and then oh, it's there.
yeah,
That would be
yeah.
great. Thank you all. We'll let you know how it goes.
Great. Okay, Dean, future solicitation schedule.
So I wanted to just share a proposal. It's not terribly formal at this point. But I wanted to see what the board's or the council's reaction to it might be. It has to do with the schedule.
Hmm.
We've talked about this before. And until in the last month or two, I had been thinking that what the schedule would be was quarterly presentations of submittals to the council. And those would be in response to calls for applications. And that's the model that seemed to be embedded in what DEC was expecting us to do. But I've also heard, the people would like the opportunity to apply basically anytime. And the issue for me with that is that it's going to be a challenge to do that. And it would be a lot easier to manage if there was a fixed schedule. So that's where it's possible that we could do an announcement that is one time a year and it covers however many rounds that we're going to have, and someone could feel free to submit an application. It's just that it would be reviewed at whenever it's on the schedule to be reviewed. And as for now, it had been expected that it would be 4 times a year, which is, it's helpful for people that want things to be determined soon, but it's also a challenge. And I'm really happy that there was the application that we received, but there was just one application. And I know that this is an indication of how it will be in the future, but all of this boils down to my thinking that perhaps instead of 4 times a year, it could be 3 times a year. So every 4 months, there would be an action by the board. And that's the basic idea. So the board would review a series of applications every 4 months rather than every 3. That's one part of this. Another part of the conversation that I wanted to have is a result of what's done in the Chittenden. Done by the regional, the QUISC in the Chittenden Regional Planning Commission, which covers the northern Lake Champlain Basin, where they have an application process that has 2 steps. And as a result of those 2 steps, they have 2 presentations of the application. And I've been not a fan of that idea because I don't want people to have more meetings to go to, but I'm also interested in knowing whether or not other people think there is a benefit to having pre-applications, or if not pre-applications, at least a presentation of an application before you actually have to vote on it. If you think that's a good idea, then that's a little complication for me if we were to go to 3 times a year presentations. But I wanted to have some conversation, and my thinking for 3 times a year prioritizations and pre-applications, or people feel like it's beneficial. This is that maybe it's something that could happen less formally, or maybe there's a committee that's created. If the body as a whole feels like, we really need to have this initial conversation before the application is considered final. And that's a way around it. A subcommittee would be around it. It's just, you meet a lot already. I don't want you to have to meet more. I don't want you to have to feel like things are happening too fast or if things are happening too slowly. If there was a 3 times per year schedule, the prioritization, we're doing one in July, but it would mean that the next prioritization is in November, and then the one after that is March, and then the one after that would be in July again. If there's a pre-application that's associated with it, well, then, for prioritizing in November, I don't want people to have to, do things too far ahead, so that maybe in the October timeframe, you could see the schedule here. That's what this was about. Yeah, and so the slide here before I stop talking was something that I would aspire to, since it could just make the process a little simpler, is if we could agree on the schedule, we do a 1 time a year announcement, and then that announcement has the dates, so that for organizations, they would practically see it as they can take the application at any time. It's just they would know when it's going to be reviewed. The last 2 bullets may be getting into a little bit more of an esoteric area. Some discussion has happened amongst my peers about having rounds that are themed. I believe you used the word capacity, Lauren, when you were talking about your application. It is effectively a capacity application. One of the rounds for Basin 5 was kind of characterized that way. Something that I would be interested in hearing. And the devil will be in the details. How would we frame a round of applications that are geared more to capacity? Because as much as it might be nice to say, well, we'll give X number of dollars for every organization, we have to have a rational basis in order to do that, so that we get the numbers, because we need those numbers. And then the last bullet is it's maybe too esoteric to warrant some discussion. DEC has at different times in the past made a lot of the fact that Wix and Quis can sponsor two types of projects: a project that's a sub-grant project, so it goes to an organization that's a partner organization. It can also issue contract requests, which would be, and I've been told any application can be submitted by anybody, and so I'm not sure that this really matters, but we've been told that, okay, keep in mind, you can do these two types. Well, a contract request or a call for applications that focused on contracts may get us more into the realm where private sector firms are having ideas and they could move an application forward, but they would know that they're not necessarily guaranteed to do the work, and they would have to find a sponsor or have a sponsor assigned. So anyway, that's a lot of stuff. I would be happy to answer questions. I think the first question, though, is, are people comfortable with 3 times a year, or do we keep sticking with 4? And then we go on from there as far as the questions.
Lauren?
I think moving it 3 times a year is great. I do want to maybe revisit the timeline,
Yes,
but I think 3 times a year is fine.
I concur. And
I agree, 3 times a year is really good. It would really make us focus more on the meetings, I think, to know that there's only going to be one every 4 months. I have been through the process in the other basin of doing the pre-application and then doing the actual application. I did not find any value in that. And I would really be hesitant to want to participate in that in this basin also. I think what's really key is for the organization that's making the application to have open communication with the quiz provider and especially the DEC. That's where we have run into a lot of our instruction and guidance is getting through DEC's requirements, and as things are changing fast, as we're finding out. But I think it's on the organization to do this communication and really nail this up before bringing it to the council itself. So that's the way that I would lean toward this. As far as breaking it down into the type of application, I guess I'd have to think about that a little bit more. I would have a comment.
Lauren?
I agree with not a pre-application process and going through DC. I do wonder if we want to like create a little bit more community among all group participants and all project sponsors in general. To say, hey, do we want to like meet to talk about a project that's outside of the WIC? I don't know if that's allowed. But I do think like we've talked about, hey, that the watershed projects database is not up to date. It'd be great if it was, or like, hey, all these. Should we know what people are doing more generally, or what they have done? I think that needs to be maybe a conversation at some point. And I feel strongly that they should not be themed calls.
Yes, I agree.
I think if people have an idea, they should be able to submit it for every round, in my opinion.
Any further thoughts or comments? Anyone from on screen? Can't actually.
So as far as this schedule, if there's no pre-application, that last column can go. Was there an adjustment to this that you were thinking? Is it, yeah, well,
November's a terrible month to have meetings in. And I don't know if we wanna like shift everything a month. And so it's like an August meeting, an October meeting, a December meeting, and so then the October meeting would be a ranking meeting.
So that you would say the prioritizations would happen in October, February, and June.
If you did that math correctly, yes.
we haven't. We've had kind of a single meeting. We haven't had August meetings, although our July meetings have sometimes been in the beginning of August. So I'm just thinking about that. If there's a, yeah, I mean,
I guess too, like if you're trying to go to construction the following year. Getting your yes in October and then getting your paperwork by January. Really sets you up for success. As
Yeah.
opposed to getting a yes in November and then, I don't know, if Dean ever wants to go on vacation or take a holiday off. You know, then things get pushed back. Pretty quickly.
Part of my concern with the proposed timeline is that we did only get one application in July, and I think that's because I'm feeling underwater. I suspect other organizations are as well. So I do think July is not great. I don't know that June is much better. But yeah, I think I don't share the same crazy November that Lauren's thinking of, but there are a lot of applications due in November for which based program and others. So yeah, I think a discussion of the timeline that works best so that we can try to get robust applications is warranted. Dean, can you make the participants show just so I'm not missing?
oh, it's not sure. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah,
Yeah, my
thank
bad.
you. Yeah, Alaire, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a huge preference about like 3 times versus 4 times. I do wonder, it seems like we're getting into a rhythm where we're able to review applications and talk about them. So it does make me think like if we're meeting every other month, reviewing applications on half of those, like just curious about the work that we would be doing the other meetings if we're not reviewing, because I think that's our primary goal, right, is to be doing this. But I think I like the idea of like maybe we can think about doing more outreach or maybe having more informational sessions or inviting community members or something. So I'm curious about that in terms of the 4 and the 3. But either one seems fine. The idea of just like people can submit an application at any point, it will be reviewed, based on the schedule that we set up. And so we'll just hold it. Dean, you would just hold it until, the next review time. In terms of timing, I agree, like the summer application doesn't make a ton of sense, but something in the fall, it doesn't necessarily have to be full, like equally spaced throughout the year. I'm wondering about, like a fall one is sort of a early to midwinter and then like an early to mid-spring. If we were interested in requesting applications and on a timeline that would be letting people go and do the work. How quickly, once we approve something, how quickly does a grant agreement get finalized and let people actually start doing that work?
So the first round was incredibly slow, but the good news is that I'm optimistic that this application that was just approved by the council can result in what we call a task award in 3 weeks. That's my hope, that it would be that quick, because there were just so many gyrations spent with these other documents. But 3, maybe 4 weeks. It should be that quick. All of the stuff that happened up to this point was with the goal of having it be so much simpler now that we have the master agreements in place. And then there's been there's a system for these task awards. And we have organizationally the ability for the assistant director to sign these, not just the director. So knock on wood, 3 to 4 weeks is how long it would take to get it all lined up.
Yeah, okay. That's great. And yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately it's like those of us, or those of you and those of us who are doing this work, like Lauren's application, it's like, I don't think that she or anyone who we know is out there doing this like consistent, high quality work, like shouldn't actually have to do a lot of presentation or like explaining why they should get funded to do that work. Like it should be like the easiest, most straightforward process possible for folks that are kind of established organizations or players in this world. Because it just takes a lot of energy and time to prepare to do those kinds of presentations. That being said, it's interesting to share kind of like results of the work. So I'm always just interested in sort of like balancing like the learning that we get from the water quality work that our partners are doing, creating like minimal barriers for people to actually get the funding to do like work that we all know is like high quality and should just be happening. And I do think that it's great to hear, Dean, that it's a more of a quick, like streamlined process now. And I'm hoping that would be something, because I think I was thinking about the idea of like, we only have one application. It's not a huge amount of money. It seems great. Compared to a process like one of our earlier meetings where we had like 4 applications and they were really different from each other, and some were a lot of money and some were less. And there was this sort of like, I think some of us were like you just naturally do that. Like you compare the ones that are presented to you at one time. And when there's only one, then it's like, okay, yeah, it seems good. We should just go. But I think we should just not, there shouldn't really be like a lot of it anyway. It's like you, Dean, and your staff should just be like, this is what we recommend. We as a council like learn about it and ideally would just be then moving it forward if it's something that you recommend for funding based on all the metrics that you have to use. So there shouldn't be a lot of like presentation that has to happen other than like us learning about these projects. So it feels like I just would hope that this would be just like the most minimal possible going forward.
So would it be okay for me to suggest that I don't want to go back to polling too much, but I could do a couple of different alternative schedules. One shifting things by the month, one that is avoiding summer so that wouldn't all be equally spaced, and then people can react to that. And then I can share the results of what the polling says so people can start to see where there's some, coalescing of support.
Sounds like a good proposal to me. Sorry to make you more important, but that seems easier than all of us going, well, this is my busy month, this is my busy month. Yeah, Lauren.
Just one thought too. I know last time we had our proposal, and then we needed more information, so we need to have another meeting. And so just thinking about that timeline too, like if someone does submit a proposal and it needs to start in the field season, just making sure we give ourselves enough time to like have a second meeting about it. Feels important in case like we end up having to do prioritization twice in a row. Just up there.
Pressure release valve
Yeah.
meeting date.
Yeah, so you don't have to do another poll.
Right.
Try to get us all in the same room.
I'm good with that. If
Is there further discussion about this potential schedule shift? Yeah, I guess that's a great question. Lauren asked if anybody wants the pre-application. We don't want to have that be a thing that we add to our quick processes. We see none.
okay, that's good.
It's a relief for everyone. Oh, that's true. Yeah, Was there a discussion desired about the theme rounds so that it doesn't just get bulldozed by what Lauren and I feel? The discussion of having rounds that are focused on certain aspects of this work?
I agree with you both to not have the themed rounds. But to have clear descriptions of what these different kinds of projects can be, but I think we already have that.
Or,
I can do a plug. DEC did do a project eligibility webinar a couple weeks ago. It was surprisingly useful. I'm gonna have all my staff watch it. Just wanna plug, it was really like,
Great.
for folks new to this work, I think it was very comprehensive. Gianna did a great job.
I'll get the link out to the group for that.
yeah, that was great. Let's see. Saw it come through, but did not attend.
We ready to?
Right, yeah, I think we're ready to move on to conflict of interest.
Okay, well, this is a wonky policy type conversation. We haven't had one of those for a while, at least having to do with conflict of interest. The meeting packet included the excerpt from the bylaws of the BWIC. The material, that language in the bylaws really leans heavily and draws from the QUISP rule, the Act 76 rule. And the text is here. I drew out what I think the key points. That, yeah, it's my subjective assessment, but it sets a high bar. Act 76 sets a high bar. It says conflicts are indirect or direct conflicts, and that's just something that if you live in this world, you may have encountered this before, where a direct conflict is something where it's you and it's that thing. It's a short line between you. It's not through someone else that you have an indirect conflict. So it's both of those types. So it captures more as a conflict of interest. And it's financial, so it's financial and it's other things. That makes it, this is making it even broader, and it's involving family members or associates. And it's the language says that you must disclose and a member must recuse. And in the case of applications, though, the applicant can answer questions, even though they've recused. So there's a 1.5 page proposal. This is the extent of DEC's guidance on conflict of interest. It's been in development for a long time. As a QUISP, we've been kind of frustrated by the whole process of some of the chapters, not all of them. Some of the chapters have been developed after there's a lot of input from stakeholders. But this one just kind of popped out. DEC seems to be trying to narrow what's required, and I can appreciate that would be a good thing if we can remove the shackles, if the rule shackles. It's emphasizing financial benefits to the BWIC member or the member's organization. So it's getting away from this non-financial conflict of interest. It's mentioning personal and familial, but then it sort of cuts it down. So it seems like it's saying if it's a family person, it can't be like this minor piddly little thing. It's got to be substantial. So it seems again like they're trying to narrow what would be a conflict of interest. And I'm just giving you the heads up. This guidance isn't finalized, but this is the direction things seem to be trending in. It's a little anyway, I can answer questions, but it also does some things that go well beyond what are addressed in the conflict of interest text in the bylaws. It says that votes on slates require all of those whose projects are included in the slate to recuse themselves. So at one point, DEC was saying, they hadn't really reduced it to writing, but they were saying two things. They were saying the role is to prioritize a list and vote on that prioritized list. Oh, and then if you are an applicant and you have one of any of those projects, you have to recuse yourself, which basically makes it next to impossible to vote on a slate. So they have backed away from that. So they're saying if you do have a slate, well, then everybody's got to recuse himself who's got an application in. And they're now kind of recognizing that practically, the only thing you can do is vote on these individually. I think there's sort of a way around, but only the sponsor has to recuse himself. So what the Quist and the Wicks have been doing recently seems to be what they are embracing. Now, but they throw in this catch, this kind of clinker. They say the vote outcome must be one that is not affected by any other vote. So that kind of, I mean, I'm not sure why they had to put it in there, or they felt they needed to put it in there. But somebody could argue that since the money is finite, a vote to say yes to one project is going to be, it's going to have an effect on the other. So they really should have taken that language out or left it out if they didn't want to keep that question raised, but they have included it. I think as a practical matter, it's not going to really affect what we're doing. But there's that. I also wanted to say there is a new section or this new topic that has to do with the confidentiality of the materials. So they say all book members shall treat all Quist materials related to RFPs and or project solicitations as strictly confidential prior to and through voting on the underlying project, so as not to convey an unfair advantage to any party. I spent a lot of time thinking and working this kind of stuff, and I'm not sure what the heck that's about. I mean, they seem to be trying to say, be discreet, but this language goes way beyond that. And I also think that it's probably in conflict with the public records law, but I just wanted you to know. And if it's something that you have a reaction to, then maybe it's something that your organization would want to comment on. And maybe there's the need for some kind of discussion. The staff has prepared we got input a long time ago, but we are using and reusing a call for applications. So there's not much that's, what's the deal with that? When an application comes in, it's a public record. If someone requested it, I don't think we could keep it secret. I'm not sure what it is that a member would be aware of or privy to that you would have to keep confidential. So anyway, to me, it's problematic. It may be that they'll end up jettisoning it, but they must have felt it needed to be said as they said it. There's also something that's new that has to do with the Quist staff. I or Dea or anybody else who works for the Regional Planning Commission couldn't submit an application if we had a job on the side preparing applications. We can't do that as a side gig. That's kind of, it kind of goes without saying, but the regional planning commissions or groups that work as Quist also may feel like, well, that's something that's covered in our own conflict of interest and personnel policies. So does it really need to be? But it's there. And it also couldn't be on my property without me saying explicitly to the BWIC, hey, this application could be on my property. And I think there are other things that the guidance could be addressing, but that's what they chose to. And then the last thing that I was going to touch on is this about disclosures, where this guidance document says a conflict of interest must be declared once it's apparent and recorded in the minutes. And that's what gave me pause and has led me to say what I said at the beginning, where if there's an agenda and that agenda lists a project and the member hasn't had time to read the materials carefully and they get to the meeting and they realize, oh, that application concerns my brother-in-law or sister-in-law or whatever, then we can sit, because that's the moment when it's apparent. And that's what this guidance says is when you're supposed to say that you have this conflict. And so hopefully we can cover our bases in future agendas. So when I do in the next agenda, folks, it's going to probably have a disclosure if you happen to have any. Oh, and there is one other thing that has to do with, they call it a statute of limitations. People change jobs. It's understandable. Sometimes they leave on good terms, sometimes not, but this guidance says that if you're a WIC member and you've changed jobs, you aren't to vote on a project sponsored by your former employer for at least a year. And there's this feeling like you might show them favor or disfavor, and that you could even do it for longer if you felt like you had this issue. I don't in the world we live in, I don't know that I see that as a big deal, but they felt like it would be. Anyway, I'll stop there. If there were any thoughts or reactions, like I say, it's something I've encouraged organizations in the past, because I think hearing directly from organizations has more impact. In addition to the comments that come from the quiz, but. Yeah,
Is there any rule about the project can't be located on the project sponsor's property?
I mean, they haven't, so the project, so an organization, so. I'm trying to think, I don't think that I left out, like the regional planning commission, or you as a conservation district, if you had a property.
Or if our board
Board
members.
member, right.
Property?
Yeah.
We actually are doing that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't think that's in there. It's funny because, you know, what the language that they're trying to do with the QUISP staff is that there's this, I think, sense, the perception that if a QUISP staff person could be affecting the prioritization or the recommendation, and that's self-serving. But if you're the sponsor and you're the applicant, you put in a proposal that others are trying to react to. You don't have any greater control over it. So I think you're fine. Okay. This is just something that I thought it would be helpful to get discussed, if for no other reason that we'll be changing things in the agenda. I think that DEC had aspired to having things short and sweet, but even with a page and a half of text, it does have some curious things.
Well, considering the limited number of organizations that are making applications, is this tying the hands of planning commissions from actually going out and looking for projects, for non-regulatory projects? Or soliciting ideas from subcontractors to get projects, you know, in the loop?
I don't think it has that effect. I think that the effect comes from the high bar that's in the rule. I mean, they're doing some things that are creative interpretations to try to narrow, because I think that if it's in the rule, they can't really justify narrowing what the rule requires, because we're supposed to do things consistent with the rule. But I don't think that this proposed guidance will have a material impact on the RPC or the QUISP soliciting projects. It's not tying our hands in that way, because I don't think there are many QUISP staff. There aren't many staff at the RPC who might be deterred, like, oh gee, I was going to do a stormwater, I was going to try to promote it, but now I have to disclose it. I'm not going to. I don't think it's going to affect it that way.
Because we don't need any more roadblocks or any more limitations than what we already have.
Right. I think that, you know, they're trying to make it a little bit better, but the solution to the problem is in the QUISP rule and that initial definition of conflict of interest. That's where I think it's at.
Ellen? So just a point of clarification for the disclosure procedure. So I imagine when we're at a prioritization meeting, each sponsor would say out loud, like enter into the minutes, like, I have a conflict of interest with my own project as the sponsor, or you know what I mean? Is it going to be that fine grained, or is it just sort of assumed? But it's just that recorded in the minutes bit that seems.
Yeah, well, by having it as an agenda item, if anybody says something, it's a reminder.
Right.
That's really what it is. Because like in the case of an application, we have a single application, we have the applicant, it's like, okay, she's done this before, she knows she's going to recuse herself. And so it's going to be captured. It's really more for, if let's say there was some conversation about a project or that it was a project idea that was headed towards an application. The person may just say, I want to be safe, and I'm going to say I have this connection.
Right.
And maybe there's not going to be a vote that day. It's just that the vote was going to be at the next meeting. But they put it out there, and by having this agenda item, it's just this reminder. Someone say, I've got no conflicts, or, oh, I know that person. And, you know, if this ever comes to a vote, I want people to know that I know that person. So, ready to go on?
So is there any further discussion about this? Conflict of interest materials? Okay.
So the next topic on the agenda is public participation policy. This is something that was on the agenda last time and there wasn't sufficient time to cover it. I'm just gonna work off these bullet points, but then just turn things over to any members of the committee. So there was a committee, well, going back into time when the council was first created. Among the list of things that it was required to do was to adopt a public participation policy. It seemed pretty much a no-brainer that it would take a lot of time to adopt a real meaningful public participation policy. So it was an interim policy. And when the council did that, it said, you know, we need to work on doing a permanent one. And there was a committee created, and that committee came up with a recommendation. And that recommendation was brought to the council, but along the way, the Regional Planning Commission, which has this relationship with the BWIC and the QUISP, they were doing some work on the regional plan. They were talking about public participation. Long story short is that the Regional Planning Commission first wanted time to review the policy, which took a long time, but that happened. And the other thing that's happened is that the Regional Planning Commission is working on a public participation plan, which I had understood the goal was to have that done in December. So the message that I was bringing was that the Regional Planning Commission did its review of the policy. They're thankful for the work that's been done. They think some of the material that's in it is more belongs in a plan than in a policy. So the QUISP is encouraging the council keep using the interim plan until the Regional Planning Commission's public participation plan is pulled together. So that's a long-winded explanation, what may be a simple process. The ask is to continue using their interim policy, maybe use the material that's been developed by the committee as a guide or a framework, but that's the ask.
Lauren?
The book is separate from the RPC though entirely.
You see, the BWIC is separate from the RPC. It's the QUISP and the BWIC are connected, and the RPC and the QUISP are very integrated. It's the QUISP as a role that the RPC plays. So I know my answer to the question is, yeah, in some ways they're entirely separate, but in other ways they're not. Yeah.
I fully understand that the QUISP is not separate. But I guess in my mind, the WIC is separate.
Yeah, it isn't an easy question to tease out.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things like the things having to do with procurement that are QUISP related. Those are all in the Regional Planning Commission's procurement policy. The Regional Planning Commission didn't say a program of ours, which is the QUISP, has its own procurement policy. So it's like the QUISP is an alter ego of the Regional Planning Commission, or it's an alter ego of the Regional Planning Commission for certain types of work, which just means that, yeah, it's an alter ego of the Regional Planning Commission, which makes the request that Catherine has made about waiting for the public participation plan to be developed Yeah, it makes sense in that light, but I can also appreciate if you're a book member and you're seeing me and I'm coming here as QUISP staff. You know, that seems like, well, it's removed from the Regional Planning Commission, but I'm also a Regional Planning Commission employee. The QUISP doesn't pay me, the Regional Planning Commission does.
I guess my concern is that we've had a draft plan since midwinter. And seeing that there's only been one application this round, there's not enough organizations to do the work. And so we need public participation, we need outreach, and I want to make sure we're headed in a direction that is actually going to achieve that on a reasonable timeline. And I appreciate that the RPC is making a public participation policy for the RPC. And I think we need help doing clean water projects, especially what just happened. And we need it soon. So if it can be soon, great. But if it's gonna take another year, I think we should come up with another plan.
The best I know is that the timetable is December. That's what I know. That's what I can say.
Was the issue that it was more like a plan than a policy, or that they just don't want to have a second policy?
I think from where I sit, one of the issues is that it went beyond being a policy, that it became more like a plan, and that some of the things are better suited to be part of a plan. And I know these seem like, you know, insignificant distinctions, but yeah, it's a level of detail that it is not overarching policy. So that's what I'm saying.
Can we make it a plan? And go through it that way?
I mean, if the group wants to call it a plan instead of a policy, and then I go, you know, I report that back, I can see what happens, but I don't know that. I don't know what difference that would make. I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren, your root concern is timeline. Is getting this enacted and start using it.
I think it's timeline, and also, I don't know what's in that policy that's gonna be written, and is it in line with like what all of our goals are as a quick, and if it's not, we should have that conversation. And whether or not we want to adopt the Regional Planning Commission's policy or not. If it's not in line with what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I think that's well stated. Any other comments or concerns about this dual process? Lauren?
I guess we need every other policy for the WIC independent of RPC. Like all our bylaws and everything.
Yeah, but I think that one is specifically cited in the rule as being adopted by both. That it is a policy that is approved by both or signed off on. The QUISP and the, and so not to get into the weeds, but from one perspective, there's a QUISP program, and then there's a QUISP director. Some DEC documents talk about a position, not the one that I hold, but is the QUISP director, and that is the director of the Regional Planning Commission. And so there is, in this particular policy, it's supposed to be both. And so it's not just,
weird. So I was gonna say it's weird.
well, a lot of things.
The full bylaws, of which the conflict of interest policy is part of the bylaws. It's weird.
There are,
If that's what it is, it's what it is.
yeah, a
I'm
lot
saying
of
it's
strange things about how the structure was determined in the rules, and whether or not that will ever change, and these things can be unwound, but they're wound the way they are.
So Dean, just to try to hone in on Catherine's concern. She does not like the plan that was created, or she just wants to not have two dual plans. Is that?
Well, I don't, so since the idea of having because right now what it is in play is a replacement policy, a permanent policy, but it's pretty exhaustive and looks somewhat like a plan. And so, but at no point was it said to Catherine, hey, the council wants to adopt this plan. It was the proposed new policy. And so I don't know that calling it a plan rather than a policy will allay her concerns or issues or whatever those interests are. So calling it something different, I don't think changes it. I think that it's, if the job is to have a policy, the document that was prepared goes beyond a policy and just is more. And that's where I think she's thinking, wait until there's been some work on the regional planning commissions and to hold that up next to. And maybe some of those things will be in both, maybe there will be two, but it shouldn't be, her ask was that it be put on hold. And I guess if there's the feeling that by putting it on hold, the book is going to lose something major, then the book decides what it decides. And I just take that back. If it feels like it's going to lose something by not acting or by, concurring with her request.
Thank you.
There's some message in the chat.
I think it was just Alaire saying she'll be right back. So is there any, with the BWIC, within the BWIC members that are here? It sounds like Lauren has concern about the fact that we have not been able to use this policy, enact this policy, start increasing our public participation to increase the amount of applications that we get.
Yes.
So
Does the BWIC think that if we could enact this policy today, that we would have, I would hate for us to sort of say no to Catherine and then not actually move forward. So, if we were able to move forward right now, would we? I mean, I know that we're all pretty much, some of us literally and figuratively underwater at the moment, so it seems like a pause until the next meeting wouldn't turn us around too much, but I don't want to encourage that if anyone else feels differently. Lauren.
Just another side comment. I think it's challenging to figure out still what the role of the BWIC is at all in this process. If so much is you get submit an application to the quiz makes a recommendation based on criteria that the ECU told us to use. And we're not making our own policies. I know, I love you guys, and I know you know that. This is like, it's just a very frustrating process for me to feel like there's any value of having a WIC at this stage. And maybe it'll become clearer in the future when there's more controversy, but it feels like right now, I just feel useless, I guess.
if I can just interject something that came across my email just the other day. Some of you are aware of the DEC requirement when you're holding a public meeting that is outreach, you log it into the end form, and there was a reminder, everybody do your end forms, and there was some conversation about whether or there needs to be an end form for WIC. And the response, I can maybe even find it in my email. I will forward it, but the response essentially says that WIC meetings don't get logged that way. They're not about public involvement. It is a different role. So I'm only offering that as a way to maybe help you understand what DEC's take is on what the WIC is doing, but one way to read that email is just they're not seeing it as being about public involvement, which may make people happy or may make people pretty depressed, but I'll share that email, but I think it sheds some light. I can also say that there was a gathering of people in my role not that long ago because we were frustrated by the need for outreach. What are the ways to do it? How can it be done? And then even more recently, had a conversation with someone who is in DEC in a communications role and going over the fact that there needs to be a communications plan and they still don't have one, and no one has figured this out. And I can understand your frustration is all I'm saying. I can understand your frustration. But in terms of what the role of the BWIC is, it does have a policy role. Its fundamental role, I think, as far as DECs, is that it comes to scoring the applications or voting on the applications. That's the key role. You do have some policy development, and that may not seem like much. Anyway.
I appreciate you deeply, and I hope that you know that. I just. this whole
Yeah,
process
I'm
has
not
been
taking it. I don't know. No.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
And anyone else that has been involved with the public participation policy care to comment? Oh, no,
There's there.
yeah, everyone be back. So. I don't really know. I mean, I guess the way to move forward here would be, we need to give the RPC a response, I think, so. I think
Is it possible to say, okay, but like within that, the time frame that's been proposed, like somebody make a motion to use the interim policy until December, and if there isn't some resolution between the two, that then the board will move forward with some kind of policy replacement. You know what I mean? Just to sort of
Put an
share
end date.
what the thinking, we'll just share the thinking and concern of the WIC, you know, as feedback, rather than just like, okay, you know.
And really emphasizing. We need public participation, whether or not there's a policy for it, like that's written, we have to start doing it. I guess is my thought. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me. I know the loudest one in the room, but.
I may appreciate.
Yeah, maybe sometimes talking and meeting is easier than coming up with a position in a meeting like this one in order to communicate. So maybe that's an idea, is that
Conversation.
a get together of some sort with some folks.
So I'm not sure, Mr. Dave, I'm not sure a whole lot of people know about this program that's out there. And I know this, you know, we're talking about public participation, and earlier we were talking about potentially just advertising for projects once a year. I think the more we advertise for projects, the more projects we might get in here. And then the more this program gets out there for the public to see. So I know I've mentioned it to my select board before. I need to mention it again, just to let them know it's out there. But it, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but well, let me ask this question. Can private residents get one of these grants too?
Private residents. No, that was a pre-approval.
Right, so it has to be some nonprofit or some organization out there looking to do a project that is not permit required.
Well, I mean, the project could be on private land.
Right, yes, the sponsor has to be a pre-approved
Correct.
organization or contractor.
You know, is there another call for?
There was.
So there could be some. There could be some people out there that need to do something on their shorelines or on their properties, but they don't know any money's out there, and they don't know to go to a nonprofit or one of these other organizations that can help them develop a project and then get the money.
That's true, but there are also organizations like Kent's and Lauren's. I know Kent's working in Fairfield Pond and Lauren is working on Lake Carmine. So there are places where they are doing outreach, but you're right, not everywhere, although you've also done shoreline work in a lot of places. So a lot of that ground, but you can never do enough to
Correct.
get the message out.
No,
And I
that's-
also just wanted to say very quickly, when I say having, some of my concern is the formal stuff. And so if we do things formally once a year and there's a schedule, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that we never say anything more. It's just that we don't, all of the other stuff can be as creative or as wild as we can make it. It's just that we've taken care of the formal stuff that one time and not have to worry about it. That's it.
Say there was a pre-approval round.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so there was, and there was only one response. And it's not in this basin, it was in the Lamoille Basin.
One response statewide or,
Oh, one in the two basins that I work with.
oh,
Did you send that to us to send to people?
Well, the announcement went out, the organizations that have the existing. That are already pre-qualified were on the list that said you don't need to apply because you're already on.
Totally missed this. I apologize. I totally missed this. Was it for like engineers too?
No, so this was the partner pre-qualification,
Right.
the contractor pre-qualification, that one has not happened yet.
okay, second.
That one is gonna happen more September-ish.
Would you be sending me that email again?
I'll send. So is there,
Yeah, I think it would be good to have, this discussion is great, but it would be good to have a clear. Well, clearly formed way the BLIC wants to move. So, I think, yeah, okay, Lauren.
I move to agree with the Quist request to delay our acceptance of a public participation policy until December or soon thereafter, when the RPC is planning to release theirs. And in the meantime, to have conversations about what public participation can look like informally.
Great. Is there a second to that motion? Dave. Second. Okay, all in favor of waiting until December with conversations happening? Raise your hand. Got Sarah, myself, Lauren, Kent, Dave. Beth. Okay, any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Yeah, I don't think it counts as an, I don't know, do we need to mark Alara as an abstention if she's not? Currently.
did she still stepped
I think
away?
she's still stepped away,
The
yeah.
minutes
so-
can
so-
say she was stepped away.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's true, let's have to mark when she came back, good. All right, okay. So, yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, yes, that's carried.
So, this is basically the same as what I had said last time, but, we have, made further progress. There's only one master agreement, that I have yet to have signed, but it's actually in the Lamoille. All of those that were signed, were those that are with organizations that received awards. There are a couple of communities that had submitted for, master agreements. The town of Westfield is one, so Jake, I should talk to you. And the town of Georgia through the Conservation Commission, we had provided them with the documents, but it hasn't been acted on their end, so I don't know what is going to be happening there. They don't have awards, so there's really nothing being held back, but those are two that have not. And as I said earlier, with those documents in place, it becomes much easier to get some money out with the task awards. That's what those are. The sub-grant awards, like I said, I'm hoping that's just gonna happen in 3 or 4 weeks. The last bullet having to do with O&M operations and the maintenance, that's something that DEC had they had a schedule that had a lot of work happening in the first 6 months of the year, and it hasn't been nearly as significant as I think they had intended. The QUISP were supposed to have submitted a description of what we thought operations and maintenance would be, how we would be administering it. But DEC is still working on things, and they put a hold on to things during the summer. So anyway, this was supposed to be the year where there are a lot of things active with operation and maintenance. And I can tell you that so far there hasn't been nearly as much as I thought, and the progress is going more slowly, but that's been the story. If people are curious about operations and maintenance, or you have a perspective on it, though, I'd like to talk to you, because I want to make sure that I'm understanding things the same way that you are. There was a committee that's been meeting, and earlier today, when I said that not all of the DEC guidance chapters were sort of like suddenly popped out without input. The chapter on operations and maintenance is one where there has been a lot of involvement. There's been a subcommittee, and they haven't done any drafting. They've just used an outline and they've gotten feedback. So I'm hopeful, knock on wood, that when it comes to operations and maintenance, the guidance document will be one that everybody can embrace. I'm spending a lot of time talking about operations and maintenance, and the reason I am is because in DEC's mind, they're picturing the world where we've reached a point where we've done so many projects that more of our money, if you can believe it, is going to operation and maintenance than going to making the projects. I think they're getting a little ahead of themselves, because we haven't got that many projects done. Nonetheless, when projects are done, we will have to figure out how they're going to, how O&M is going to work, because we are going to be able to help pay for it. But it does seem like it's a misallocation of effort. That's just what I think.
Just want to note for the minutes that Alara's returned. Sorry, Larry, we had a couple of votes, and there was discussion about how to, are you abstaining? And
Sorry about that.
Our
Our office is like, yeah, just dealing with like flood response right
Yeah.
now. So,
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, we're okay, but.
Oh, Lauren.
I guess just in terms of operations and maintenance, I know at one point we had talked about being able to pull past projects into the
Yeah.
numberland here.
Yeah,
And
it's still a possibility.
okay,
And that's one of the things that DEC has said, and they were going fast and they slowed down, going fast, going slow, slowing down. But yes, short answer is the WICs will have the opportunity to bring in projects. However, there's also this complication that DEC is starting to talk about having limits on the kind of projects they want us to pull in. Because I'm just trying to think of the best way to describe it. They don't want it to be a zero-sum game. They want to avoid a situation where the QUISP and the WIC pull into our ledgers projects that DEC is already seeing as having been on another ledger, even though they're not necessarily. So there might be caps. But this is something that this guidance chapter is going to get to. And I know that Gianna has spent a lot of time, working on this issue, but yes, we will be able to. And it's something that, between now and November or December, I would imagine that would be one of those meaty discussions. What types of projects should we pull in? DEC, again, will be thinking of limits. Maybe some of those, I don't think they want us to take credit for a project that was just done. They don't want us to capture 20 years of projects, although they may be inclined to encourage us to adopt projects that have, 5 more years of life. And then by getting them into our system, we could then see a way to extend the life through further another project. Yeah. Understanding how much benefit there is to those kinds of projects. This is something, I'm babbling, but yes.
Any other concerns or questions or discussion regarding these topics? Agenda.
I just wanted to say thanks to everybody because these are crazy times. I didn't get a chance to say it. And if you're not able to be here, I'm sorry that I can't offer you a sandwich.
That's you.
Is that the last thing on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Super, we have, yes, okay, updates and conclusions, great. So if there's nothing further, I will take a motion to close this meeting.
So moved.
Lauren, is there a second?
Second.
Kent? All in favor? Got Kent, Lauren, myself, Jake, Sarah, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks,
Be
guys.
safe.
Good luck, stay dry, stay safe. Think goodbye.